Well, here we are. It is COVID-19 season, and even though the three of us live very close to one another, we are not together and we haven't seen each other face to face in quite a while. I'm Josh Davis, and down below is Abraham Deng, and over here on this side of me is Jaewoo Kim. And we're three brothers from different mothers, and we just like to talk to each other and share our perspectives with one another. So we're going to have a little conversation today. I want to share a song together. This is a song that Jaewoo and Grace and I wrote together, and we just released kind of a live acoustic version of it. And Jaewoo, maybe you could tell briefly the story or what inspired you with the idea to write this song. We'll listen to the song together, and then we'll just reflect on it a bit.
Matthew 25 was really a powerful chapter in my life. I used to see worship and mission as two different things, or how do I say? Depends on the your denominational background or your faith tradition. You may have the dichotomy of what is done to the Lord, whatever you call it. Or whatever you do that to people, love God, love neighbor, or worship and mission, or worship and social justice, or mercy ministry. People call it differently, but there was a dichotomy in my life between, in terms of Christian practice, like what is done to the Lord and what is done to people. But then that chapter, especially Matthew 25 verse 40, whatever you have done to least of these people or person, you have done to me. It sounded like integrating those two actions or those two directions together. And then I was having peace in my heart. Oh, it doesn't have to be so much separated. Whatever I do to least of these vulnerable people, God may receive it as act of worship.
Yeah. So let's listen to this song together, and then we'll reflect on it.
Gave me a dream. When I was sick, you came to visit me. When I was hopeless, you welcomed me in. You saw me, you heard me, you took the time to care. You saw me, you heard me, you took the time you gave. What you offered them, you have offered me. And what you've done for them, you've done for me.
First question I have really is one that goes back to the text that this song was written off of. Jesus says, "Whatever you've done for the least of these, my brothers, you've done it unto me." And when we hear that phrase, the least of these, does that mean that Jesus is saying some people are less important or less valuable than other people? How do you see that?
It's interesting because Jesus was uh, living and speaking within um, top-down culture, like status was important in that culture, which is same as my culture or Abraham's culture, more than American culture. Um, and it is hierarchical culture, and he knew exactly what that meant as a Jewish rabbi. He knew he was higher in status, but he's shown great example as washing their feet, knowing that could be a totally countercultural and shocking behavior. And so even though I can see him, he was using the language of hierarchical culture. He was operating counterculturally by equally valuing everyone.
Hmm. Hmm. So using the language to say that our culture has some people that it looks down on or says are less than others, and probably for each of our cultures, for Korean culture, there would be some people that are looked down, seen as less than. In Sudanese, South Sudanese culture, there are probably some people that would be looked down on or seen as less than. Maybe even different tribes, right, that would be perceived as lower or less. And Jesus isn't saying that anyone is less valuable, but even in the middle of this cultural context, Jesus is pointing it out that the people that you would most be likely to avoid, when you do something for them, you're doing it for Jesus.
Yeah. And then he was actually modeling. He was hanging out and eating out with most
Right.
marginalized people in the
Right. Sinners,
society.
prostitutes, tax collectors, fishermen, right? The angels appeared to the shepherds. All of these were the marginalized and the people on the outskirts of society.
And I mean, and as Jaewoo always say that, no, uh, I don't know, I will just rephrase it, but is what he said, is the content of it, or the meaning is that the community cannot be a community until when someone you don't like walk in.
Okay.
I don't know if that was the exact word, but that is, whoever that someone we don't like is the least, if for whatever reason, maybe the status or the whatever, the top-down culture, or even in the gender,
Right.
like some other culture, yeah,
Right.
the cultures, other cultures say that women are less than men.
Right.
I actually have encountered like this recently. One person said that to a female who was very creative, coming up with idea like, you are just a girl.
Mm. Mm.
So stop bringing this idea because you are just a girl.
Wow.
These are not supposed to be coming up from you. So that is the least here. I mean, and I think even when they go down and saying that, okay, when I was thirsty, or when I was hungry, or when I was homeless, those are the things that we daily, in our daily work, we see them, but we just bypass them. But these are very clear pictures, you know, and of course it can go deeper, as I said, no, into the top down, or to the gender, to all these things.
Mm. And then that song says, and Jesus said, whatever you do for them, you are doing it for me. And then he also says, what you don't do for them, you've not done unto me.
Mhm.
What you don't do for the people that you ignore, for the people that you like to pretend that they don't exist, what you don't do for them, you're also not doing for Jesus. How do you reflect on that?
I just want to point out, even well-intended people like um, can bypass people who are vulnerable because of that blind spot. Like I can be viewed as rich, very resourceful, well-off person in the society for some of people that I know. When I don't see myself as a rich person, because it's relative. I can see that in terms of who has access and who do not have access. If I have access to medical service, government, um, fund, or you know, clean water or housing,
Transport, travel, any.
transportation, yes, all of those I consider as a normal necessity. But people who do not have access to those things, I have way more privilege to them. So in that case, I have a lot of blind spot that I have to be intentionally looking for people who are easily bypassed or um, invisible, because of my blind spot. In that sense, it's a lot of work. I think a lot of intentional work.
And I mean, you were talking, I couldn't help but to remember when my dad, should say my late dad, when the war were about to break out in 2016, and he told me that he called me before the war broke out actually and say, take your family out of
Mm,
South Sudan. And the only reason was telling me that because he told me that because you are the only one who have the American passport.
mm,
So you are privileged, you can go.
right.
And so now I become that privilege, as you were saying. And they, in this situation, they become the least. So now when I am here because of the privilege, what I have, should I just turn a blind eyes to them because they are the least?
Mm,
So here, whatever I do to them to 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 to, to help them come out of that or to cross the river or to come to the safer place or to to the shore is the least I can do. What I do to them is something that I've done to Jesus.
hmm. That's interesting. I'm just thinking about each of us, and I think each of us has times in our lives and places maybe in our lives where we are one of the people who has a lot. And then we have other
Mhm.
places in our lives where we're one of the people who doesn't have a lot. Whenever we travel outside of our own culture and outside of our own comfort zone, immediately then I need, like when I went to Sudan, I needed people to teach me how to do everything because I didn't know how to do anything in South Sudan. You know,
Mhm.
all of a sudden now I'm the least of these. And I think there's something really beautiful about realizing that we all have need and we all have something to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then something to offer is not necessarily always money. And then as the author of Culture Care pointed out, there's a material capital, but there's also social capital and creative capital. When we went to South Sudan, there was so much social capital. Almost everything could be done through relationship,
Right.
and that's a beautiful resource they can offer to the rest of the world. um, if I have more material blessing, then of course that's something I can offer. Just yesterday my family were offering some clothing. My son's rarely used clothing to help some of the people in Clarkston who recently had a fire in their apartment complex. So we didn't have immediate material resource like in terms of money to share, but we were able to share creatively what we have, like real materials, not the green colored paper, but
Mm-hmm.
real materials that we had.
That's good.
And I totally agree with you with that. And I keep referring back to my family. as I came back from my dad funeral rites, and we had I had a conversation with a lot of people, and they were mm, like emphasizing the point that he just said. He said that okay, sometime when we call you, you people who are in the West, we don't need money all the time.
Mm.
Just pick up our phone or pick up your phone and call us. Just the fact that we know that my brother or my son or my brother-in-law has called me, that alone is enough. And make them know that okay, I am still in their mind. Even though if I don't receive anything from you, that can give me the courage and the energy to move on or to overcome. The moral we can exchange just by just a simple phone call that could do it. And it don't even have to be even a 5 minute conversation. Hey, how you doing? I was thinking about you. Or even saying that, hey, how can I be praying for you? Uh, um, just or listening to somebody. Somebody's going through something, and then you call them, and then you're like, okay, I'm listening, and they tell you everything they have,
Mm.
and it's like
Abraham,
now sharing the burden with you.
Right.
I had this great idea. Why don't you? I'll call you every day if you give me a roll of toilet paper every day.
So that'll be your exchange. You'll let Abraham talk, and he can give you toilet paper.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, I will see if I have anything in the story.
Jaewoo, how have you seen Abraham care for people that other people might overlook? And then I'll ask Abraham, how have you seen me care for people that other people might overlook? And then I'll say how I've seen Jaewoo care for people that other people might overlook.
I believe Abraham has amazing gift of seeing people, regardless of their skin color or which tribe they come from, man or woman, and he will he has this God-given gift that I don't have, which is very natural in talking to total strangers that he never met before. Because he first see them, and when I usually just bypass them, he will stop and talk to them. And especially I've seen that in South Sudan. Once again, South Sudan, very top-down hierarchical culture, especially coming from his tribe of Dinka. He can be viewed as a privileged person who has many access other people don't have. But I've seen him talking to little boy begging for money, or a teenager boy asking for guitar, or some strangers in the street, and then he will at least try to do something to meet their needs instead of not meeting their needs. He will bother to stop and actually talk to them and do something. So I just remember those moments. I believe God has given Abraham a lot of social capital, like just so much social capital, relational resources.
Well, I will the top of the list. I can't help but to come up with that the story of the deaf woman in Wow. I don't know how many years she been sitting just right there of the church, and nobody ever come from the church and talk to her.
Mm.
And here you are coming from nowhere, out of the blue, and went straight to her, and you were able to see her and talk to her. So it is that I think the gift of that sign language that God gave you, it's just like the same story you told us when you went to your neighbor across the street, and that what made you to learn the sign language or something. The fact that no, even in West stuff here, the way how you find a time to every single person whether what they do or what they say, you always find a good thing to say about it. And honestly, sometimes I'll be like, I don't see that. How did they see it? It just bypassed me. And until you say, I was like, wow, you know, um, it goes to all of us who are in the staff and even to our children when we in the worship night, how you appreciate a drawing of a child. That is, to me, honestly, it's like, if they give it to me, I would throw it away. But you find a way to put it in the wall and just
Mm.
come back to say that, hey, I remember this, and this is what you did, and this is the great work you did.
When I think about you, Jaewoo, I think about how often when you're given a platform, you're given privilege, you're given an opportunity to share, um, you think about who you can share that with rather than just keeping it for yourself and just, doing what people expect you to do. Um, you think about who has a gift that's not being invited to share their gift, who has something meaningful to offer or to say that no one else would pay attention to, or they wouldn't get invited to share, and you invite them. And sometimes you even have to fight battles behind the scenes to make those things happen. Um, and it's beautiful for me when I think about how you see people that other people wouldn't see, and then you use the platform that you have to give them space to offer their gifts, and you empower and you dignify people in that way. And you bless not only the person who's given the platform, but also all the people who are receiving those gifts, now that that person has offered, because you first saw the value in that person and opened something you had to make it possible for them. That's powerful. And I wonder how many times you've given the platform to Jesus, when someone asked you to do something.